I'll spare you the metallurgy to priesthood journey. We'll save that. We'll save that for a vocation talk sometime, which I've done more than once. I realize folks are eating, so please go ahead. I'll try to talk above the din of forks and knives. But I just want to first of all say how happy I am to be invited today to speak to all of you. I was visiting especially with some of the young people that are here with us today, and really, when I was waiting and a lot of you folks were coming out of your workshops, and I saw so many young people here, I was just amazed. So let's give our young people our appreciation. And I said to them, everybody's thanking me for coming and supporting this wonderful event. And I say this sincerely. I come away from these kinds of gatherings much more encouraged, much more strengthened, much more pumped up, if you will, than anything that I could possibly offer to all of you today. So I want to thank you for your commitment to life, your continued work to defend the dignity of every human life, especially the preborn child. We have much to celebrate, really, in the progress of the Respect Life movement in our country over the years. I think many of us sense, and I think it can even be documented, that there has been a somewhat of a shift in public opinion on the issue of abortion. And more people, and I dare say especially young people, are waking up to this cause and to the importance of the dignity of every human life and the need to protect the dignity of every human life. So, there's much, even though there's much work yet to be done, and there certainly is, we also need to take some sense of pride in the success of our persevering efforts over the years that have led us to a day when there is more openness to the dignity of every human life. Now, as I thought about that, I thought, well, what explains that shift? Well, we can look at things like the efforts of those of you who have perseveringly worked in the cause of life over all of these decades now since the tragic Roe v. Wade decision. We certainly are going to attribute much of this success to the prayers and the sacrifices of so many who have prayed for a change of heart among those who do not respect the dignity of life. So yes, those things are all there, and we do give credit to them. But I think many of us would agree that what has also helped much in this area is really advances in science and technology that have happened in the years that have ensued since 1973. Now, with all that we know about human genetics, that we didn't know those many years ago, that from the moment of conception, a unique member of the human race comes into being with his or her own, genetic makeup. There will never be another human life like that one which is conceived. And I remember Bishop Morlino in Madison, Wisconsin, so powerfully speaking about that and saying that is not philosophy, that is not religion, that is science. That from the moment of conception, there is a unique new member of the human species, that's the way he put it, that has come into being. We call that a human life. So that has helped us, but I think perhaps even more has been the advances, of course, in imaging and the ultrasound imaging that we have now that is remarkable, fascinating, where we can see the unborn child being formed in the womb of his or her mother at the earliest stages. What we can see, that window inside the womb has given us all a startling new look at the fragility and the beauty of life in its most nascent form. So those things have all helped us. So the natural physical law is what has helped us greatly in the advances in our protection for human life. But then I got to thinking, well, where would we be today in this movement? Where would we be with regard to the success that we have accomplished in these years without those technological and scientific advancements which have helped us greatly? Would we still recognize the uniqueness and the dignity of every human being conceived in the womb? You know, I would like to hope that that would still be the case. I don't know. We will never know because those advancements were there. In other words, would we still recognize a natural law written in not just the body, but in the mind and the heart? Human reason applied to the nature of things observed. Would we still recognize not just a natural physical law, scientific law, but would we recognize the natural moral law that says that every human person from the moment of conception until natural death is worthy of profound respect because of the innate dignity that every human person has? Would we be there today with this issue, with that alone being our moral argument? We will not know. But the grave problem in our society and modern culture today is, quite honestly, the fact that there is no recognition of a moral law which transcends the individual human person. In other words, there is no recognition of an objective truth that we do not compose, but that which we recognize and discover as written in the very nature of the human person himself. Yes, we recognize all these natural scientific laws that we talked about, and those are objective. There's objectivity to that. It's scientific, objective, natural, physical, scientific truth, and it's undeniable. But we do not have the same when it comes to the natural moral law, an objective truth to which all of us are bound and which all of us must recognize. That, sadly, is not present in our culture, in our world today. This moral natural law, however, is true, and it is as true as any natural physical law, and that's what must always be recognized. The natural moral law written in the nature of the human person, written in our mind and in our heart and discoverable by the light of human reason, is no less true and objectively true, free from any subjective judgment, than those natural physical laws which we all clearly recognize. Just as an apple dropped will fall to the ground by the natural law of physics and gravity, so there is a natural moral law, laws that are true, whether or not a particular individual recognizes that moral law or not. Our recognition of it, our acceptance of it, does not change the objective truth of it anymore. I can't decide that gravity is not true. But yet, when it comes to the natural moral law, sadly, many decide that there is no objective truth which binds all of us, but rather it is simply left to a subjective judgment and, quite honestly, sometimes simply to feelings. The sad reality is that we cannot ignore the law of gravity, but because the natural moral law is recognized by the light of human reason, it can be distorted or ignored if we refuse to recognize what is written in the very nature of the human person and use the light of human reason to discover it. Apply the gift that God has given us in intellect and reason to observe and to come to a knowledge and a recognition of that truth. The sad thing is, my dear friends, is that we can no longer in our culture today even agree on the essential nature of the human person. This is what we have come to with this decline in reason, the decline in recognition of moral truth. We, as a people in the culture and in the society in which we live today, we as a society, as a group of people living together in community, can no longer even agree on the essential nature of the human person. What does that do for us? Well, it makes it impossible really for us then to engage in any really meaningful conversation or dialogue over the serious cultural, societal, and moral issues which confront us in our time. And I don't have to name all of them for you. The nature of the dignity of marriage. We can no longer have a meaningful dialogue on that issue because we can no longer even agree as to the essential nature of the human person, created in the image and the likeness of God. And so we're at a great disadvantage, and it's a tragic situation in which we find ourselves. Because without a recognition of an objective moral truth, we're in deep trouble as a society, as a culture. Pope Benedict XVI, apologize for those of you not of the Catholic tradition, but that's where I come from, and so that's where we turn. But that's the point. It's not about a religion, one particular religion versus another. It's about this objective moral truth that is binding and recognizable by all persons of goodwill, even if they be not people of faith at all. But it is human. It is human, not just religious and philosophical. Pope Benedict XVI spoke of this in his homily which he gave at the beginning of the conclave which elected him pope. And here is what Pope Benedict XVI said, quote, "How many winds of doctrine have we known in recent decades? How many ideological currents? How many ways of thinking? The small boat of the thought of many Christians has often been tossed about by these waves, flung from one extreme to another, from Marxism to liberalism, even to libertinism, from collectivism to radical individualism, from atheism to a vague religious mysticism, from agnosticism to syncretism, and so forth. Every day, new sects spring up, and what St. Paul says about human deception and the trickery that strives to entice people into error comes true. Today, having a clear faith based on the creed of the Church is often labeled as fundamentalism, whereas relativism, that is, letting oneself be tossed here and there, carried about by every wind of doctrine, seems the only attitude that can cope with modern times. We are building a dictatorship of relativism that does not recognize anything as definitive and whose ultimate goal consists solely of one's own ego and desires. That, my friends, is the challenge before us today. This is the cultural force with which we must contend if we are going to advance this cause for life and for the other serious moral and cultural issues which face us in our time. We must work toward the recognition of an objective truth about the dignity and the nature of every human life and every human person. Only that, and only then, can we defeat a culture of death by truly living and proclaiming the gospel of life. Thank you for your attention.